Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Big DK Energy Podcast. My name is Danny K, or the DK and the Big DK Energy. So, a lot of great things come out of Jacksonville, Florida, like we mentioned, Limp Bizkit, Leonard Skinner, and 38 Special. However, today's guest is from Jacksonville. However, like me, grew up most of his life in one area and then moved to Orlando to attend UCF. And then afterwards, he moved away, but then is now back. The reason I have him on the show today is because he is another Orlando podcaster with... This is an awesome name, by the way, The Profession Session.
Thank you.
He brings on guests who have excelled in the field of business at ages 40 and below, but that does not penalize anyone above 40.
So, and that could change. It's 40 for now, but yeah, I already moved it up from 35. So
exactly. So today we're just going to pick his brain, find out more about his show, and hopefully we'll get him a few new followers and listeners. So with that all being said and done, please help me in welcoming today's guest, Mr. Brody Vinson.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad to be here. This is awesome. You got a great setup here.
I appreciate it. It's the best setup that I can make with what I have, if that makes sense.
Very, very resourceful of you. This is awesome.
Thank you. And I actually have an entire shopping list that I'll send you later if you ever want to just, take a look at some other things.
Of course. Yeah. We'll have to compare equipment sometime soon.
I'm down. Maybe we can turn that into an episode itself. So anyway, like I said in the intro, you are another Orlando podcaster. Actually, recently I did a collaborative episode with this one podcast called A Novel Console. It's a husband and wife and their dog, and they all discuss movies. Sorry. Well, they do discuss movies sometimes, but it's mostly books, video games, and a sex toy of the week.
Oh, wow. That's a nice little thing to throw in there. I like it.
Absolutely. It's a lot different, but it works. And so I love the fact that I get to collab with another podcaster in the area. So I've seen the statistic, there's over 2 million in the US or in the world. And only slightly above 40% has an episode more than 2 episodes. So, it's...
Yeah, you're telling me that. That's crazy.
Right. And so I really respect those who can belt out more than one episode because as you know, podcasting, it's not a chore, but it takes time.
It's a grind for sure. I mean, it takes a lot of work doing everything. There's so much that you don't even think about when you're getting into it. So for me, it was really important once I had decided that I was going to do it. I recorded 4 or 5 interviews before I put any of them out because I was like,
Smart.
I need to have a calendar. I ended up kind of changing it. I got a little bit looser with the calendar because I can get into that more. But the episode release calendar kind of stays consistent. I release once a week on Wednesdays.
Oh, what time?
Make sure. I don't have a set time on Wednesdays because I've got kind of a busy work schedule. If I get to it ahead of time, I'll usually schedule it for about 10 a.m. or so.
Okay, nice.
And then that way it's out by the time I have clips coming out. And we can get deep into that too. I like talking about kind of the nerdy, technical parts of it.
Okay.
But I like to just make sure to release it on Wednesdays. Typically, I'll try to go ahead and upload it onto YouTube and schedule it so it's ready. It just releases. And then I kind of put out smaller clips. But at first, I had the smaller clips scheduled as well. And then I kind of realized, I don't know, it didn't work as well for my schedule. So I kind of just started making the clips as often as I got around to it and just try to put out at least one a day. Sometimes I'll go back and take it from old episodes. Sometimes I'll do it from the most recent. Just kind of whatever I feel like putting out.
That's smart. I
feel like having the base schedule is really important.
Absolutely. In fact, not that I'm any kind of authority in podcasting, but this is about my 7th month doing it right now. So
you're a good bit further into it than I am, though.
Yeah, but you're also you started in March, if I'm correct, right?
I think March. I am 8 episodes released at this point.
Look at that,
about
man.
10 recorded.
That's a whole 2 months.
Yeah. It flew by. It's been a lot of fun.
See, that's another thing that I noticed about podcasting. It does fly by because you have to get an episode every week. It's I don't have anything done yet, and yet something is due tomorrow kind of thing.
Exactly.
Reminds us of school because...
It does a little bit. It does. That's a good point. In a good way, though. I mean, of course, it's a lot of times it is a grind, like you mentioned.
I stay up until 3 a.m. editing episodes sometimes, but you know what? I love it.
Absolutely. And I find myself looking forward to Wednesdays every week because I know that there's going to be a new episode coming out, more to promote.
It's a nice mid-weekly marker that you can congratulate yourself on. Because actually, I release on Wednesdays too. I try to release at 5, but sometimes they might be 5:13, something like that. But really, what I brought you on here for today is the Profession Session. I'm sorry, I love that name.
Thank you.
It's so catchy, and like I told you before, it sounds like something that would pair well with a 1930s jingle of some sort.
Yeah, we were talking about this. I'm thinking now that I might have to do a jingle because I think
come on down to the Profession Session. Yeah.
I'm excited now. I'm gonna have to workshop that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you got it. So tell me, how did it all start? The typical question that you probably we're probably going to get.
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. So funny enough, I've done a lot of freelance marketing work just on the side of whatever I'm doing full time for the last.
Like running Instagram accounts and that kind of stuff?
I'm kind of getting into that a little bit now. I do less of it now because I've got a more full-time thing. I can talk about that at some point maybe. But so a lot of it was kind of website building and just kind of helping people like establish at least a little bit of a presence on a website to be able to showcase an existing business.
Do you know how to like HTML, CSS, and all that kind of stuff?
Not super much, no. So that was kind of a limitation that I'd found. And so I kind of got a full-time digital marketing position after I got into the freelance just so that I could learn a little bit more. And then, so I did that from last February through the end of the year. And then during that, I kind of got into a startup in staffing, actually. So now I do that. Probably takes up about 50 or 60% of my time. And then I do the podcast on the side of that. A couple other little just freelance type of things.
Have you always wanted to be like a podcaster, interviewer of some sort? Or did someone was like, hey, Brody, I can imagine you being a host. And you're like, why not?
So funny enough, just growing up, a lot of people would always tell me I have kind of a voice that they could see in radio. So that it's always been kind of in the back
better
of my
a voice
head.
than a face in radio, if you catch my drift.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. So I thought that was always kind of in the back of my head, but I didn't think of the podcast until super recently, actually. It was really like the beginning of this year. So I actually did an interview. Someone just reached out to me on LinkedIn. They had seen my marketing company that I do like the freelance stuff through. And it's actually it's based out of Jacksonville where I'm from. It's called the Daily Ad Brief. And what they do is they just have multiple people do short little interviews talking about their company. And they do it multiple times a week, like multiple episodes a week. So they just reached out to me out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Good way to promote myself. Correct. So I got on and did that. Just a quick little 10-minute interview. But I just loved it. I just thought it was a ton of fun. And when it came out, I was like, doing just a show about people doing what they do. And so the wheels got spinning and I started thinking about it and I was like, what if I did that? Because I'm very much in the world of business. So talking to people that are in business, related things like that. For me, it's a cool way for me to learn more about business and expose myself to areas of that. And I realized that I love talking to people about what they do anyway. So I might as well just make it into a show and try to make it educational.
Maybe the bug will bite someone else.
Exactly. That's what I'm hoping. I feel like podcasting in general is a really fun thing to do. And it's been super educational for me personally. It's selfishly, I'm learning a lot doing it.
Not just learning, about yourself, but learning media stuff, having to go about a show. Because remember, back in the day, it seems like you had to be like specially chosen in order to be part of a show. And then you didn't realize that there was an entire 50 plus person crew working that. Yeah. But now for people like us, we're a one-man army. We have to, I sometimes veer off and look at the camera because I got to make sure that thing's freaking recording because I can't hire 2 cameramen.
I do something similar when I'm recording myself. I have like the little flip out thing that comes out of your camera. Don't even know what to call it because I'm so new to this, but the little flip out screen, just a flip out screen that comes out of your camera. I usually look off to that like whenever my guest is talking, and I usually I have the cameras further apart. I hadn't thought to put them as close together like you did, but that's smart.
I mean, honestly, it just works out that way, and that's just how I've seen it done. Granted, it's like I've been in the industry for like 7 years doing media, so it's like there's some stuff that I just know is done, but I don't know exactly why it's done.
Right. So you just kind of had that in the back of your head. And so, yeah, that's how I got into it. And I was lucky enough, I don't have the experience in the industry that you did kind of going back, but I was lucky enough to have a good friend that's one of my business partners who runs his own media company out of Jacksonville that just kind of showed me the ropes, told me what equipment to get. And then a lot of it's just been a lot of YouTube, a lot of self-teaching.
And that's also as much as part of the grind as actually just editing episodes, because what I've learned from the jobs that I have worked in the past is you always learn on the job. Even the CEOs, they're still learning something.
This is something I feel really strongly about, actually. If you're not constantly learning on the job, you're going to get behind at some point because things are changing constantly.
So I have an interesting question. What exactly does learning on the job mean for you?
That's a great question. I feel like it means taking inventory of your day at the end of every day, or at least taking inventory of how your week went at the end of every week. Think about the things that you did that week and how you could possibly have done them better. And then if you think of things that you could have done better, just looking into how you might go about doing those things better. I feel like it's about thinking about the specific aspects of your everyday duties and how you can improve on those and just finding educational resources for those. So for me, like I said, it means a lot of YouTube, a lot of just kind of searching things, a lot of Google, and then I read a lot as well.
What kind of books do you like to read?
So lately, a lot of management stuff in my staffing company. So it's me and 2 other partners, and then we have a VP of operations that works under us that reports to us. So a lot of management lately, just because we plan on building out that team a little bit more. And so I want to be just a better manager for him whenever he's reporting to me, and to be able to kind of teach him to be a good manager to employees that are eventually under him. And then I like to read about tech as well. I'm really into this series called Harvard Business Review. It's this book series where they put out basically, there's dozens of different books in this series, all from the Harvard Business Review, but it's the must-read series. And they essentially pick a specific topic. So right now, the one I'm reading is called Managing People, and it'll be like 10 to 15 articles from just the foremost experts in those areas. So you're just reading about like a few different perspectives of just a very focused thing in that industry.
So the thing is that, I always hear people like, oh, I'm in tech. For me, that's a very blank statement. And so I'm thinking, do you work with the microchips within iPhones? Do you work with the actual steel manufacturing of an iPhone? Like, what does tech mean exactly?
To me, it's hard to say.
Sorry if that seems like a lot to put on you.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. I wouldn't even necessarily say I work directly in tech. It's more of just a passion of mine, is just the direction that technology is moving in general. So for me, I would say the specific kind of subcategory of tech is kind of user interfaces, user experiences.
Okay, got it. Like UI, UX design.
Exactly. I'm really into that kind of stuff. I had a little bit of the website design experience.
Isn't it amazing, like, just by how much opacity the color has on a button, it can be determined whether it's a good button or not?
Oh, it's very important. There's a lot of research into colors and how they affect psychology, actually.
I have a bit of a graphic design background from my major at UCF, and so, I learned about the different colors and that kind of stuff. Because it's like some colors, they do look good, but then again, there are some colors that can, with the right combinations, can be pretty bad. For example, red, white, and black is a very, very common sports color palette.
That's true.
But then again, red, white, and black, it can also be seen as the colors of a Nazi flag. So,
That's true. It's all about context sometimes.
Correct. And actually, here's one thing that's a point that always comes up in mind. But for example, so the swastika was originally a symbol for peace and prosperity, and it was only made bad because of the Nazis.
So I have a little bit of a story about that. I was in San Francisco a few years ago, and I had no idea about that, about the background being from peace. I only knew it as the Nazi symbol.
Yeah.
And so I was somewhere in San Francisco, and there's a big crowd of people walking around, and looked like really peaceful people, and they were. And they were all just carrying around swastika signs. And I was like,
great.
What's going on here? Like,
was it a bunch of Asian people?
There were a lot of Asian people.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I had no idea it was a Korean thing. Yeah, but they were all carrying around swastika signs. And I was just like taken aback by it. I was like,
correct.
Are we okay?
Yeah. Okay, completely understandable. So actually, I visited Korea. The most recent time was back in 2018. And so my uncle took my sister and my cousins and I to this one park up in this one town called Sokcho is what I believe it's called. It's like 40 minutes south of the North Korean border.
Okay.
So
that's close.
Oh yeah, it's very close. In fact, I actually went to an observation tower and looked out across the line. And so with like some periscope, I was actually able to see like people farming in North Korea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could you see any of the big cities from there?
No.
Have you ever seen those pictures of like the big cities in North Korea?
Like Pyongyang?
Is that like the major one that you see in the pictures a lot?
That's the capital, yeah. So I would assume that is it. But so yeah, we were south of the border. And we went to this one national park. I can't pronounce it for the life of me. So in one part of it, it's like lush naturey, and then the other side there's a Buddhist temple complex. And so my uncle, I guess he's Buddhist, I never knew this, but he was praying in the temple, and so you could see the swastikas lined up around the architecture of the building. And so because I knew it was also a symbol for peace, I was like, this is actually beautiful art rather than something that was associated with evil, which ironically, as being a Jew on the other side, I know all about.
That's got to be a weird dichotomy for you. Just thinking about like on one side of your heritage, it's all about peace. And on the other side, it's like the biggest, most threatening thing to your history.
Now that you mention it, another dichotomy that's kind of weird in my Korean Jewish combo is the fact that Jews, since they're kosher, they don't eat pork, but Koreans love pork belly.
How does that conflict work for you?
I mean,
Which side do you fall on?
I eat double bacon cheeseburgers, man.
There you go.
If that gives you an idea.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Like growing up, so unfortunately my mother passed away when I was much younger due to a car accident. And so my stepmother, since my dad was Jewish, he remarried to a much more conservative Jewish woman. And so we had to keep kosher in the house. However, outside the house, all bets were off. So that's when
So you just like step out on the porch with a double bacon cheeseburger?
Oh, you bet. I actually had to be outside of the porch area. Like I had to be like on the sidewalk next to the driveway. If that makes sense.
That's funny though. I mean, double bacon cheeseburger is worth it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, up until the heartburn kicks in, but you know about it. So burgers, they come from businesses, and like businesses, they have owners who are interesting, and you talk to them. Speaking of which...
Ah, nice segue. I like that.
It was one of my weaker segues, but you know, I wanted to like link it back to you. So anyway, tell me, what goes into your mind when it comes to picking out guests?
So when I'm picking out guests for Profession Session, I really like to just look at kind of what they're doing for their professional life. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be something super business related, but just whatever they're doing to make a living. And I like to pick someone who is young and just very ambitious and really driven in whatever they're doing, very passionate about it, and just is really, really doing well and has had a lot of success for their age.
That's awesome. I have a weird question.
Yeah.
So on the show, I forgot his name, the bald guy. How old is he?
He is, I want to say 33 or 34.
He looks really good for his age because I thought he was closer to the 40 mark.
He's absolutely jacked.
Is he?
Absolutely jacked. Yeah, huge. He works out like a monster.
It kind of reminds me of this one chef, Robert Irvine. Anyway,
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
he was on this show called not Kitchen Nightmare. That was Gordon Ramsay. I'll show you him later. But essentially, he's another guy who looks really young for his age, but then is also super jacked.
Yep.
But then
That's the secret.
what's weird is that this guy, not to say this in a bad way, but it's kind of weird how directly similar his face looks like this one teacher I had in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Except the thing is that she's a woman, and yeah, but like they had the same similar face. They even have the same light colored eyes where when they look like they're angry and yelling at people, they have the exact same face. And I was like, holy crap, is that
my teacher?
Is that But so young people, even if they don't look exactly young but are totally jacked,
Exactly.
whatever the parameters are. We've had 8 episodes, correct?
So 8 released so far. I've got another couple
On
recorded
deck.
right now on deck. Yeah.
Okay, actually, I have like another 11 episodes on deck.
That's
this
the
would be
way to
number,
do it.
This is number 12, yeah. I literally just batch record and then I just edit them as the weeks go on.
It's way easier to do it like that, honestly. I've recorded 4 in 2 days one time. Yeah, I was like,
Well,
I gotta get to it.
Go Brody. And I found it really wholesome that you brought your sister on the show.
Oh, yeah. It was really cool to have, actually. So, a little background on that. I mean, for one thing, she has really made a lot of impressive strides in just her management capabilities with her career the last couple of years.
Is she older or younger?
She's younger, actually.
Nice.
So, she is 23. I'm 25.
Got it.
So she's made some really impressive strides in her management over the last couple of years, and then just gotten super entrepreneurial, and I'm super proud as an older brother. So it was really cool to do. But we also, the two of us, unfortunately lost our father last year.
I'm sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's been a tough time, but it also really, really brought us together a lot just going through it.
Absolutely. That's
And,
what happened to my sister and I after our mom died. So
You mentioned that, yeah, and you said you were really young.
yeah, I was 10, she was 7 when it happened.
Wow, that's tough, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really world-shaking experience. And so me and my sister went through that together, and my dad had his own business, so we actually found ourselves as the owners of it. So I hadn't even mentioned that we're actually selling the company right now because it's this kind of beast that we're not really cut out for. But we've been managing and running that for the last 6 or 7 months together as well.
Nice.
So we've just gotten really close together, and really she's made incredible strides in business the last 6 or 7 months, and I've been super proud of her. So we got to talk about that a lot as well.
We all love our siblings, even though they can be little shit sometimes.
Oh my God. We were at each other's throats growing up, but we're like best friends now.
We love each other, but I still annoy the crap out of her.
That's how it should be. That's exactly
We're
how-
older brothers. It's part of the unwritten contract that we have with our siblings.
Yep, you have a contract to just raise them the right way. You're like a third parent almost.
Especially if you're an older sibling.
Exactly.
Because we're the guinea pigs, and we therefore get all the brunt of the yelling, where all the younger people are like, we've already done this again. Just do whatever you want.
Exactly, yeah. It's funny that you asked whether she was older or younger, though, because a lot of people have always thought she was older.
Because of success, quote unquote.
That, and she's just very mature for her age. She always has been. So people, when they meet us together, I don't know if that means I'm immature for my age. Hopefully not. But she's just incredibly kind of beyond her years, mature for her age. So people have always been like, is she the older one? And I'm like, I'm the older one.
Yeah. But, that just shows that your dad raised two good kids. Wait, how many siblings do you have?
She's my only biological, but I have a stepbrother, stepsister as well, both younger.
Okay.
They live up in North Carolina.
Okay, got it. But, it's like your dad raised you correctly, obviously. You're making strides in business, your own strides in business, not only asking about everybody else's strides, but, you also have your own. So, if I was a dad, I'd say that's a pretty good job.
He really did do a great job, I think. Just being a dad, he was awesome. He really was. And he just having his own company. The company is about 21 or 22 years old now. So,
that's almost as old as you are.
Almost as old as I am. So I've grown up seeing it almost my entire life. So having that kind of entrepreneurial exposure, just exposure to business is, I think, a huge part of what drove that passion for me.
I'm gonna think of it now that I think about it. It's like they had your sister the year before they released the company.
Basically, yeah. It was maybe 2 years. So let's see, she's 23. I guess the company is about 21 years now. It was like 2000, 2001 time.
I can only just imagine what was going on through your head. It's just like, I need to get this up and running, but I'm about to have another kid.
Yeah, and actually, so he had my sister before he started the company. And actually, the reason he started the company, it's kind of crazy. I've told this story at one other time. So the reason my dad started the company initially actually is we had moved to Jacksonville from originally Gainesville. That's where I was born, but we moved when I was like 3 or 4.
Now that you mention it, when I saw your shirt, I thought it was a gator at first because it's all like dark green.
I'm a pretty big Gator fan, but UCF above all.
I was about to say.
Oh, I was cheering when we beat them the other year. It was
this doesn't squeak.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, is that a Spirit Splash?
It is a Spirit Splash.
I didn't even notice that. I've got 3 back at home. Spirit Splash was awesome.
Someone almost fought me one time.
Really?
Because actually, as I was entering the water, my phone fell out of my back pocket. So the entire time I was looking for my phone. And so I accidentally bumped into this one angry woman. And she was like, I swear, if you bump into me again, I'll punch you. I'm like, I'm just trying to find my phone.
The crowd for Spirit Splash is vicious. People want those ducks. There was people I remember one year when me and my friend went, we both got ducks. And afterwards, these people were offering us like $100, $150 for them just to try to collect them all because they didn't get one. People are serious about them.
Just wait another 20 years and just find some UCF eBay to then auction off for thousands of dollars.
Honestly, that might be the way to go. I think I've got 3 of them. Yeah, I missed it one year.
Sorry to divert from that, but I saw your shirt, Gator, Gainesville. So you're saying you were born?
So born in Gainesville originally. We moved when I was like 3 or 4, and actually we moved because my dad had just gotten a new job with a big kind of tech recruiting firm. And so he had this great new job that he was super excited about. And then right around this time, it was 2000, 2001 time. That was when the .com bubble burst. So that industry just got, it was in turmoil at the time. So he lost his job. But right before losing his job, he had signed for a mortgage for a new house. So he had he's married with 2 kids, new job, mortgage for a new house, and all of a sudden loses his job. And he's like, what do I do? So before that new job, he actually had 5 years of experience selling custom men's suits and business wear, that kind of thing.
Huh.
So that was kind of the experience he had. So he just started kind of dialing phones and looking for customers and kind of built his own thing from there.
So literally just started cold calling people. Hey, are you going to a wedding or any kind of black tie affair sometime soon?
Mostly professionals, lawyers and some doctors, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the primary market. But actually, funny enough, weddings were huge the last couple of years, especially right after COVID kind of opened up a little bit. Weddings were crazy.
Oh yeah, I've actually worked a couple of them doing some videography and photography. Yeah, so far I've not had a bad couple to deal with, so knock on wood, hopefully I don't have to go forward with any of that happening. But
I have a funny story about that too, actually.
Go into it.
So my friend that I mentioned that kind of taught me how to get into podcasting from the equipment side, also kind of a media company, similar background to you. He's got all photography and videography, has his own company, and he does a lot of weddings actually. So that's one of the primary markets that he works in.
It's a good market to get into.
It is. He does them pretty much, I want to say 2 or 3 times a month usually. It's a huge market for him. he had one recently where it just went into complete turmoil. Like there was a dog that was supposed to be in the wedding and it ran away and they had to go looking for it.
Oh no.
And the bride, I forget the exact details, but the bride also had to be taken away in an ambulance at one point and brought back.
Oh.
She was apparently a doctor and knew like exactly what was happening. So she was like, I'll be back in an hour, but took her to the hospital and brought her back, and the cake almost fell over. So he's going to be putting out a video. I was actually watching him edit it. He's going to be putting together a video that's like a vlog of the whole wedding. It's kind of following like the wedding planner and her assistant while everything's just going into turmoil.
Just watching absolute shitstorm from the perspective of the people who have to deal with it.
Exactly. It's hilarious footage. So that'll be really funny.
I'm thankful that all my stuff has gone smooth, but honestly, that's for funny stories.
It makes for a funny story, but you want it to go smooth, ideally.
True, but then again, now that I think about it, whenever they talk to their kids about it, they're going to have a nice big laugh over it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was probably stressful in the moment, but great story.
Yeah, especially like wife in an ambulance. It's just like, did she have alcohol poisoning? Did her appendix burst? Was she cut by a piece of glass that was accidentally dropped?
I think it was like some pre-existing condition that flared up. Maybe an allergy or something like that.
Okay.
It was nothing too serious, but it was something that they had to like, just precautionary measures. They had to take her away in an ambulance and bring her back.
Actually, this reminds me of an event that I went with ZVT my freshman year. This one girl, she didn't know she was allergic to cinnamon, and she took a shot of Fireball.
Oh, no.
So yeah, we were like stuck in the middle of the road for like 2 hours waiting for her to get that whole thing settled in.
Fireball's a killer.
It is a killer. Well, in her case, yeah, it is literally a killer.
Yeah. Fireball was almost the death of me a couple times. I can't drink it anymore.
That's with me and Jack Daniels.
Yep. I feel like everyone's got that one thing.
Well, we were also in fraternity, so that.
And when
really
we were
help.
like kind of getting into things, Fireball was pretty huge. It was like the new kind of hot thing on the market. So I was like, I'll go with this. And it was delicious at first, but then you find out about all the bad stuff later.
Correct. 1 or 2 shots, it starts to taste good. 3, you can't taste anything. And 4, you're in another state.
Exactly. I stay away from that stuff now. Even the smell of it makes me queasy. But
Yeah. And speaking of moving to other places, you didn't move from Jacksonville once you stayed there, right? Or once you moved there?
So yeah, we were there from the time I was 3 or 4 to the time I was actually about 16 or 17. And I finished my last year of high school in North Carolina. My mom,
really?
Yeah, so my mom got remarried around the time I was like 16 or 17, and her husband now, they've been married for about almost 10 years, I guess. So they got married, and he was from North Carolina before that, and that's where his family was, like his ex-wife and his kids.
Oh, those are your step-siblings.
My step-siblings, yeah. So he actually got a new job that moved him back up to North Carolina, and my mom moved up there with him. So I went up there as well and kind of finished out high school, literally just my senior year in North Carolina, but then I came back down for college.
Nice.
I missed Florida.
Did you apply to any schools in the North Carolina area?
Nah. I knew I wanted to come back.
Okay, I was about to say, because, I don't know, y'all have the Tar Heels and NC State.
Great schools, honestly. Yeah, my stepsister goes to NC State, and my stepbrother's going to UNCW next fall.
UNCW.
That's Wilmington, so it's like right on the beach.
Is that like one of their other campuses, or is it like...
Yeah, so they have a bunch of different campuses.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so it's UNC Chapel Hill. That's the big one that
Exactly.
everyone knows. There's UNC Charlotte. There's UNC Wilmington.
So the Wilmington, they're still a Tar Heel.
No. So the Tar Heels is just Chapel Hill.
Okay, that's what I was about to say. That's what I meant by a different school.
I think it is a different school, yeah. So they're actually, I don't know exactly how it works. They're all like University of North Carolina and then something, but they all have different mascots and teams.
Exactly. It's kind of like the whole University of California system, the UC Davis, UC Berkeley. One of my favorites is, I believe, Santa Cruz. That's the Banana Slugs.
The Banana Slugs, that's an awesome
Slugs.
mascot.
Oh, it is. They're like notorious for that.
Do they have a mascot that comes out on the field? I feel like that'd be a wild costume.
That's a good question. I actually do not know.
Yeah, I might have to look that up later.
Yeah, especially for college games. And speaking of collegiate athletes, you had a golfer on your show too, right?
I did, yeah. So her name is Mindy. She's a friend of mine that actually plays she's, I guess, wrapped up just as of recently. But yeah, so she played for the UNF women's golf team. And so I knew her through a friend, and we've known each other for a couple of years. And so I just thought that'd be like a cool angle. It's like, it's not necessarily exactly what you think when you think a profession, but it's what she wants to be her profession.
Correct. I mean, she's making strides to make that her profession. Just like when we put out another episode, that's us showing to ourselves that we're in this for the long run. We want to be podcasters full time.
Exactly. And she's got just a real sharp commitment to it, super ambitious. So it made for a great conversation.
I bet. What were some of your favorite things from that conversation?
From that one specifically, the one thing that really stuck with me was, so she talked a lot about just like the performance aspect of like being in a big tournament and how it's a really big mental obstacle to overcome, just being ready to perform on kind of a stage like that, like the high stakes and everything of it. So she talked about how that was a really big hurdle for her to overcome, that she struggled with a lot through kind of the beginning of her career. And the thing that really stuck with me is she actually won her first solo career a few months ago. Yeah. So right before I had her on the podcast, she won her first solo tournament.
That must have been a great talking point, especially.
It was perfect timing. And so I was curious about what she thought actually fueled her being able to finally get that win, as opposed to like struggling with that before. And the biggest thing for her that she said was just kind of taking a step back and focusing on the enjoyment of the game. And I feel like that kind of transfers to really whatever you're doing. If you really focus on just like why you're doing it, and for us, why we're doing the podcast, and just make that your sole focus and don't think about necessarily the results as much, I feel like there's a lot of power in that, and that really stuck with me.
Okay, fair enough. I like that perspective. It's just that when I think about my podcast, I don't think of myself as great. This is what I mean by when I say that. Listen, I'm not here to inspire or change the world. I'm here to entertain and get a laugh or two out of some people. That's what I meant to say.
That's the power of having awesome guests on too.
Exactly.
They get to inspire and educate.
Precisely. And so that's the thing. It's like, I don't think I'm anything special, but it's like, I know that the guests that I bring on, like you, do have something that I think that people could learn from. Now, granted.
Well, I gotta say, you're good at this. I don't think you're not great at this. You got a great setup here. You're great with the equipment. You're a good interviewer. I think you're doing a great job.
I appreciate it, Brody. Thank you very much. And I see your numbers now, but that's because you only started a few months ago. But I know those numbers are going to bump up. They're all going to bump like Wall Street stockbrokers, or what are they called?
Open. I know what you're trying to think of.
Exactly. And you know why I said bumps.
Yeah. Bumping like Jordan Belfort.
Oh, that would have been a better analogy. Thanks. All right, now it's your show. So, but go ahead.
I was talking about focusing on the enjoyment of it. That's not to say I don't get, it's hard for me not to get obsessive about the analytics and the numbers as the guy running the show. But
especially one of your videos recently just got like more than 1,000 views.
That was a big surprise. Yeah, I knew it was going to do well because she is just a really impressive person, but it went crazy. Yeah,
exactly. So then, when you get a little spike like that, it's like, oh my God, I just want to look at this all the time to see if I can recreate it. But then I realize the more you try to recreate it, the more it's going to like fade away from you. So then it's funny because it's the ones that if you just keep posting for repetition, something's got to click. Something's got to click.
Exactly.
And so sometimes I just recently posted clips from an episode of my buddy from the gun range who was a former U.S. Army Ranger. And
I saw some of those. Yeah, those were awesome.
Thank you. And so I just posted some clips, and then, a few days later, now it's over 360,000 views on TikTok.
Those are the really cool moments. I think I didn't even notice really how much the one that you mentioned from my show was taking off until she called me. She called me and she was like, have you seen the numbers for the video? And I was like, oh, I haven't checked recently. And she was like, it's kind of going crazy. And I was like, I checked and I was like, what's happening here?
That's the power of social media. Mm-hmm. I mean, also that's the power of having good content, because see, there are some clips that we have that have hundreds of views, but then, when it comes with 1,000 views, that means someone, obviously a few more people were more interested in seeing what that was about.
Absolutely. Yeah, that one was a huge surprise for me. I hadn't cracked 75 views before because I had just started a few weeks before, and then all of a sudden, it's at like 2,500 now. It just went nuts.
And that's within how many months of doing this?
That was my 5th interview, so that was like a month and a week in. It was the perfect storm, though.
Some people can't even get hundreds of views, a year into their stuff. So think about that into some perspective.
The thing about it, though, is you have to not get too used to that happening, because that's you get discouraged if you get too used to it happening.
Exactly.
So I was like, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, this is awesome. But then I started thinking about my next interview, and I was like, all right, time to kind of mentally coach myself. I got to prepare myself. This one might not do that great. It might do awesome. It might flop.
It's great. Back to the grind.
Yeah, exactly. It's always got to be back to the grind. But those moments are a lot of fun when it just really resonates with the audience like that.
Absolutely. And what you just said kind of reminds me of this one book that I read. It's actually one of my favorite books ever, and I've mentioned it on the show a few times. It's called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And so one thing that it kind of attacked me about, which I'm glad it did because otherwise I wouldn't have woken up from that, is the fact that one reason why, okay, when you brought up the point about how you first recorded episodes and then you put your stuff out, it reminds me of this one part of the book where it says how one reason why people put out the hype of something and then when it comes to the due day and they actually put something out but they don't continue with it is because they already got their gratification from all the congratulations of people saying, you're going to do great. But I don't want to be told I'm going to do great. I want to be told you're doing great.
Yes. It's funny that you say that. That was actually in the interview that I had that we were just talking about, the one that kind of blew up. That was a huge discussion point in that interview, actually. Her name is Amani. She's a friend of mine. I've known her for like a couple years now, maybe. And we had actually talked about that way back, just about how like her preferences, if she's working on some big thing, a new project or something, that she won't tell anyone about it, not even like her closest friends or family, until she's ready to like drop the whole thing.
I forgot which football player it was, but he told his girlfriend, and literally on his girlfriend, I'm going to be picked first overall in the draft. And then it ended up happening. But literally the only person he told was his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And see, it's like, of course I love my family. I want to keep them in the loop. But then I'm kind of superstitious when I like have something big. Like
someone you're like really proud of being able to like bring onto the show. Yeah.
Correct. So for example, I had a golfer on the show. His name is Kyle Berkshire. And so he is... He's the past 2-time world champion for long drive. And so, but that's the thing. He was a ZVT here at UCF just for a little bit before he decided to go pro.
Okay.
And so, you know, I asked him, hey, do you want to be on the show? And he was like, yeah, sure, man. And so that's the thing. It's funny because I actually did some videography work for him down in South Florida when I was going home. And so it's kind of weird seeing him being in his element. Everyone's coming up to him, oh, can I get a picture with you, Kyle? And then I'm like, oh, I just forgot this is Kyle from ZVT.
Yeah, you just know him as like your boy from back in college. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and honestly, that's how I kind of treat every guest. And that kind of like, it doesn't make me quote unquote on your level, if that makes sense, but it just puts a good base in which we both can have some kind of cordial, not relationship, but you know, at least
human to human. Yeah,
there we go, human to human interaction. And so
I like that perspective.
Thank you. It makes sure that everyone's calm, make sure that everyone's happy, but in not a way that it looks forced.
Exactly. I feel like that's really important. I mean, you want to get genuine, authentic conversation happening.
Absolutely. But then as easy as it's said, it's very difficult to do. And actually growing up with Asperger's, speaking with people was not very easy for me. And so it was actually through my fraternity that kind of kicked me out to the wolves. And I'm like, talk to the girls or get eaten. Or you can climb up the tree and, you know, think of a plan.
That's awesome. So I guess it was something you like kind of grew up struggling with. What was it about joining a fraternity that made you think like, were you just kind of seeking something to challenge yourself to kind of like get over that hurdle?
Well, actually, funny you mentioned that is my dad was a ZVT.
So, perfect.
So all my friends were out doing their things. Actually, they were joining other fraternities. And so I was in my dorm room and I was like, Dad, I'm really sad. All my friends are not around. And then he's like, Danny, there's a chapter of ZVT in your legacy. Go talk to them.
Yeah.
And ever since that happened, you were a brother of Delta Sigma Phi, correct?
Yes, Delta Sigma Phi.
I actually wanted to be a Delta Sig for a good amount of time, but then I still have all my friends from there, and actually some of the closest people I ever was in college were from Delta Sig.
I had some great friends in ZBT as well. I had a couple internships throughout college.
Oh, nice.
Brian Cash.
Hey.
Yeah. Justin Beard.
Kleinman?
Yeah. Justin Kleinman.
All right.
Awesome dudes.
Yeah, they're all stand-up guys. And see, that's the one thing that, sure, Greek life does have its stereotypes and it does have its toxic baggage. However, this is how I think of it. If you use it correctly, it can be way more beneficial for you, especially since like we kind of connected through Greek life, you know, based on our mutual friends. And now look at it, you're on my show.
Exactly. It's a really cool thing. It just builds connections. In my opinion, a really vital time in your life because everyone is in college just trying to figure out what they're about to do. And then you build those connections and then everyone goes off into the world and figures it out. And you get to just see all these people you knew and had great times with and built bonds with just go do cool things.
It feels weird whenever like I have someone from college on the show, not because they're weird for being on the show. It's just that when I see them, I feel like I'm transported right back to college. I just feel like, oh, hey, we're going to go to the social event later. I'm thinking of that kind of thing. But then I realize we're adults with our own lives. We're doing it, man. We're doing it.
It's a great excuse to catch back up with the boys.
Right.
I mean, if no other reason to do it than just that, just to be able to catch up with the boys again.
There's nothing wrong with that. And so that's actually one one thing that I like being a photographer is like at the same time, I wasn't just being a photographer, I was a historian, which was technically my title in DBT. But then we might look at it now and be like, oh, that's a great candid, or hey, that photo is real frat, yo. But then imagine like 100 years, or if Earth makes it 100 years into the future without blowing itself up, that photo might appear like a journal being like, this is how American culture used to be in what was called fraternities. Mm-hmm. Tell me, Professor, what would go on in these fraternities?
Well, I can show you.
That's right.
I love it. That relates to podcasts too as well. I mean, I feel like just recording history aspect of it, you can kind of like, even just for yourself in a few years when we're still doing this, we'll be able to look back on episodes and like kind of examine our thoughts at the time, have like a really strong record of like how we thought about different things and be able to kind of like check ourselves on things. That's a thing that I'm really looking forward to.
I never really thought about that, to be quite honest with you. So, Brody, if anything, you just dropped some knowledge on me. Thank you.
I'm glad to be able to bring anything to the show.
You brought plenty, Brody.
Oh,
you brought plenty and then some.
Thank you.
Of course, and honestly, I could see where everyone was talking about you got a voice for radio. You do have a very distinct voice that, like, I guess I would never hear that out in the open.
It's just super deep, I think. That's what kind of.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people that talk like this. And,
Oh yeah, I have a friend from my fraternity that has a voice that when you hear him talk, it feels like the ground is shaking. It's crazy.
You know what I really love is when people can sing in that really low of a voice.
Yeah, I wish I could sing. Unfortunately, I'm not going to sing for you here. It would probably blow up the microphone.
You're good. I'm a great karaoke singer.
I do karaoke sometimes. I
Right.
will go out for that. I recently went out with a couple friends downtown here, and I sang Rockstar by Nickelback, and that was a great time.
Nice. So come to think of it, that's a song we grew up with, but that's considered a classic now.
It is. Isn't that weird to think about, though, that it's like kind of considered a classic? But, I mean, we just think of it as like classic for us, but
It's a classic from what was known as the worst band at the time.
Where do you stand on that? Because I love Nickelback.
It's like I enjoy a few of their songs. There's just something I don't like about Chad Kroeger, the singer. His old hair back from the early 2000s looked like ramen, so I'm like, all right, ramen head, you get a pass this time.
There's something about him. He's a funny figure. I think of him when I think of the lead singer of Sugar Ray, too, Mark McGrath.
Oh, my God.
They're both just like super cheesy lead singer types. I actually saw Mark McGrath live like a couple years ago. And it was hilarious. Yeah, he was fantastic, actually. He stuck to the hits. That was it. He was very self-aware of like how cheesy he is.
It's funny when they become self-aware, because I notice those people kind of play on that. Just like, screw it. Well, it's already been done, so what can be done about it?
Exactly. They've accepted it and moved on, and he played off it really well.
Awesome. It's fun picking another podcaster's brain to see what goes on in his head during his show.
Absolutely.
His or her show, or their show, you know how today is.
There's a lot of super technical aspects, and since we both do the whole thing ourselves, I mean, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's like we get to geek out over it.
Oh, yeah, I love talking about it.
And we're going to continue talking, but not about geek stuff. In fact, we're going into the last question of any Big DK Energy episode, which is actually my favorite, and that is the bonus question round.
Awesome, let's do it.
10 questions that I made up for you specifically, however, are completely appropriate that you will have clients and a job afterwards.
Awesome.
So, that being said, Mr. Vincent, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So, question number 1, Brody. Who is a dream guest for the podcast? And if they allowed you a whole week to hang out with them, what would you do?
So this guy I've been super into lately, his name is Alex Hormozy. Have you heard of this guy?
Nope.
Kind of a business expert. He's like 32 years old and kind of just the peak example of someone I would ever want to have on my show, actually.
What does he do?
So he's 32 years old. He owns this company with his wife called acquisition.com. I mean, he's got a deep story that goes way back that leads up to it. But the whole company is essentially they acquire a minority interest in a smaller company that wants to scale up, and they help provide capital for them to scale up. So they focus on specifically like service-based online learning type companies for the most part.
It's like Udemy and that kind of stuff?
I'm not familiar with that, actually. What is it?
Udemy, Masterclass.
Yes, like masterclass type stuff, but
Okay.
probably like a little more niche than like big ones that are pretty well known. Kind of like niche learning and educational stuff for the most part, or just like online service-based companies. And they take them on at usually the point that they're doing like $3 to $10 million in sales a year.
Oh,
and
wow.
the goal is to expand them up to doing like 20, 30, 40, etc. And the portfolio of companies that they have is doing like $100 million in sales collectively. So just absolutely crazy. He's like 32 years old, has just built this kind of from the ground up just by really getting into the technicals of things. And he just creates these crazy like templated ways of thinking through things that just work and get results. And so I've gotten really into him recently because he puts out a ton of content on like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Been actually a huge motivation for the way I do my videos and clips and everything. But just one of those guys where every single sentence he speaks is just packed with value. And it's all about business, which I'm super into.
Nice.
So that'd be my guy.
So, and if you were allowed to hang out with him anywhere in the world, what would you do?
Ooh, interesting. I would probably honestly just try to set up like some kind of scenario where we are building a business or the legs and skeleton of a business from scratch in like just a very hands-on setting. So I don't know what that would look like exactly. I know he's out of Las Vegas, so I'd maybe just go meet him in Vegas and do a little partying and hanging out while we were at it.
Why not, right? You
Exactly.
have some fun while doing some business. Remember.
Exactly.
Remember that. Number 2. If you could switch places with any animal for a day, what would you swap with? No pets.
Oh, and the no pets is tough because I've got a golden retriever that
everyone,
has a great life.
that's the thing. Everyone would want to switch with their dog or cat. I'm like, no, I want you to think of an actual animal out in the wild.
On the other hand, though, being a pet for a day would be pretty boring, I guess, coming from the being a human part. I'm going to go with a bird. I would go with like a bald eagle.
Nice.
Just because
American,
and you get to be like the predator. You're in charge in the sky. So you're like the top of the food chain where you're at, but you get to be flying around just doing whatever you want.
Question, do you like to fish?
I don't do it that often, but I do enjoy it the times that I have.
Okay,
yeah.
well, they also swoop down in the water and, they technically fish, I guess.
That's true. So you can get in the water too. Kind of cover both bases there.
Exactly.
Yeah, an American eagle. I guess that's a very cliche American answer from me, but
Screw it. It's your answer. So number 3, you have a panel on your podcast of business names. Who are the 3 that are on?
I would go with Seth Godin. He's kind of like the foremost expert in marketing.
Seth Godin, I love him in movies.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm
Oh,
Seth
different
Rogen.
guy. Seth Rogen, yeah.
Never mind.
But he'd be a lot of fun to have on too, but a little outside the scope of business. You know what? Actually, I'll throw Seth Rogen in there too because he's hilarious and he actually is kind of a great business mind in the entertainment industry. So I'll do Seth Godin, Seth Rogen. I feel like I should think of another Seth.
Yeah, or like something that ends with Ogen, since like you said, profession session, you like alliterations and that kind of stuff.
I do. Third one, I will go with, honestly, you mentioned him earlier, maybe Ryan Holiday.
Okay.
I've actually read one of his books. It was Trust Me, I'm Lying. You read that one?
I have not
It's
yet.
all about marketing.
Interesting.
So I'm very, very into marketing. I actually went back and got a certificate in digital marketing after I graduated.
Oh, mazel tov.
Thanks. Probably him as well, just to really get a lot of that marketing experience. I'm super into that.
Nice. Well, sounds like a panel that I should listen to. I mean, I'm gonna have to pay a few monies for it, but you know what? It's all right. These are the people to learn from.
It's interesting that you say that. The guy I mentioned before, Alex Hormozy, one of his huge kind of things that he likes to drive home is that it is always worth it to invest in education.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because it's from that knowledge that you can make yourself more money from.
Cliche saying that people always refer to when they're talking about getting an undergrad degree or something like that, but it's the one thing that no one can ever take away from you is your education.
That's right.
The more you know, the better you can be.
Or as Schoolhouse Rock used to say, knowledge is power.
Yeah. Damn, I miss Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah. Those were great.
That was from our parents' era, but they still bang.
They still played them in my classes too.
Conjunction, junction,
yeah.
what's your function?
Oh my God.
Number 4, since I know you like to travel a lot, what is a culture you must witness in person before you pass?
Interesting question.
And I'm not talking business culture.
Yeah. So I'm drawing blanks on the actual names of specific ones, but I would love to witness one of those cultures that's just completely isolated. Have you heard of these?
Like the Amazonian tribes?
Like that kind of thing. They're in a few different areas of the world. Sometimes it's on a small island.
Papua New Guinea has a bunch of them.
Yes, I think that's the one I'm thinking of actually, or one of them. I remember hearing about an example where some missionary went to one and actually was killed on the spot.
That's an island called, I believe, North Sentinel Island. That's
Yes.
right below India.
That's the one.
Okay, so you might not want to go to that one.
Maybe not that one.
Actually, I think it's even illegal to go there. So, it's probably for the best. But
so maybe not that one specifically, but I'd love to just see just a whole culture that has no idea about the rest of the world is like.
I don't know if they have no inklings of the actual world, but there's this people called the Sibajau. I forgot where exactly they are, but they're somewhere in Asia, and they literally live on boats. Only few of them have had some kind of contact with land, and even then, those big masses of houses are just floating like somewhat off the shore. So they don't actually live on land.
Are they anchored or are they kind of like nomadic?
Some have made anchored communities, but other have been more nomadic, where their house is literally just a boat and that just floats.
That's kind of cool. I honestly wouldn't mind taking a little time at some point in my life and just living in a boat for a couple months and just like riding around to a couple different places.
Fair enough. I mean, I just have to figure out the bathroom situation. Of course, everyone's like, nature's your bathroom. I'm like, yeah, but some people are sloppy and will go on the side of the boat.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Exactly. So anyway, number 5. What is a far-fetched goal on your bucket list?
You mentioned travel already. I really, really love to travel. And so seeing all 7 continents, just having been to all 7 continents would be huge.
Antarctica would be the big one, especially.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, especially since I hear those are like super expensive. 2, you have to pass this thing called the Drake Passage, which is the body of water between the southern point of South America and Antarctica, and apparently they're very rough waters.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you have to like really go in something equipped for it.
Correct.
Which is probably rare.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple cruises that are now starting to offer that option, but that's more stable. But like, for example, when I watched the show that went through that entire thing, they went in like a little passenger boat. That was meant to like accommodate people, but still.
A little sketchy.
Yeah, especially going to the last place on Earth, or the 7th continent on Earth.
Yeah, that would be the toughest one to get for sure.
Although I feel like it'd be so awesome. Especially to meet a penguin in person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did actually cross the Arctic Circle recently, though.
Really?
Kind of like the easiest way to do it. But me and my friends took a big trip actually in like the first half of April. It was like a 17-day trip actually.
Nice.
And we kind of a crazy trip. We did one of the Canary Islands, Tenerife. It's the main one. So we did there, Morocco, and Iceland. And in Iceland, there's a little island off the coast of it called Grimsey Island. You take like a 3-hour ferry there and back, and they'll let you kind of walk around for like an hour and a half before you have to be back to the boat. Mm-hmm. And if you basically just take off and run, you can get to this point that like just in time and get back. That's like this big like spherical ball that they have there that marks crossing to the other side of it is like crossing the Arctic Circle, crossing to the north of the Arctic Circle.
That's so cool.
So we went and did that, and then you can get like a little certificate in their souvenir shop where it like says that you crossed the Arctic Circle.
Oh, that's so freaking cool.
That is a cool thing to just knock off the bucket list.
Interesting, from islands to Morocco to Iceland.
It was a wacky trip. So the reason we ended up doing it, a couple different reasons, but it really just kind of was like the perfect storm of working out. It turns out that if you get to the Canary Islands, so they're like right off the coast of northwestern Africa, Morocco specifically, which is the most northwestern country in Africa. And so if you get to the Canary Islands, it was like a $10 flight to get to. Yeah,
$10?
This really, really cheap airline out of Ireland called Ryanair. It's super sketchy airline, but it was a $10 flight or something crazy like that.
I mean, you made it in one
11.
piece.
Yeah, exactly. Barely. Morocco was sketchy, but for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, big on travel, so the 7 continents would be really cool.
I like that. Number 6. What is a favorite memory from your childhood?
So my dad was a huge Star Wars enthusiast, and when he first showed me Star Wars, he made it like this big thing where we like binge watched through all of them. So probably like getting into Star Wars with him, and then like getting lightsabers from Target or something and just battling with lightsabers outside.
That's a very wholesome memory you have. And
it's a good one.
So does Star Wars have more of a sentimental meaning to you now, especially since your father's passed?
Absolutely, yeah. It always has. It was always like a huge connecting point for us. I was lucky enough to have a really, really great relationship with him and get to do a lot of cool stuff with him, and that was always a big connecting point. That, Marvel, stuff like in that kind of vein, and then sports as well, business. But yeah, Star Wars is a really big one, so it definitely holds a lot of sentimental meaning.
That was a great answer.
Thanks.
Number 7, you were struck by radioactive lightning. If you can choose, what is your power, and what is the first major thing you would do with said powers?
So I would like to have complete manipulation of time.
Ooh, okay.
And the first thing I would do is just make a list of just the coolest historical events that I can think of, like the most major cool historical events, and just go back and like see them.
See them, not tinker with them, right?
No, I've seen too many movies to be willing to tinker with them. I'd be too scared to like, I don't know, cause some chain butterfly reaction that
Right.
would result in me not existing. So
Correct. Or like the world, just blowing up. What is one of those events you would go see?
probably something from like the inception of America starting, something like the Boston Tea Party or something crazy like that. I would also want to see something from the Ice Age. I feel like would be crazy. Just seeing something like completely out of the scope of our imagination.
Like seeing a mammoth
I would
person.
love to see a mammoth. Have you heard that they're trying to bring mammoths back?
I have heard that.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
I really want to see it happen in our lifetime. I don't know if it will, but another bucket list item.
To go ride a mammoth.
Yeah, at least see one. I mean, I feel like that'd be just mind blowing to see one in person.
Especially if they managed to bring something back from the dead.
Yeah, it's like the beginning of a Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah, it's like we've watched way too many movies for this to become a good idea to go forward.
Yeah.
Anyway, number 8. If you can set up a fight event between two business powerhouses like they're boxing, who would square up?
Probably, I think his name is Kevin O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank.
Yes.
Probably him and Mark Cuban, just like a Shark Tank throwdown. They've both decided they want to invest in a specific guest, and they just have to fight for like the right to be able to actually invest in them. Like the terms are all there on the table; they're agreed upon. Neither of them will budge on the terms, but they have to fight to decide who gets to actually have the guest.
For some odd reason, I imagine Mark Cuban winning that, and as soon as he blinks Kevin O'Leary, he could just be like, "You're out."
Yeah, and for that reason, I'm out.
For that reason, you're out.
You're out, exactly. It could be a good fight. I feel like Kevin O'Leary, he's got a couple more years on him. He could do something crafty, but Mark Cuban, he's a big guy, big fists.
That, and he's all about athletics.
Super athletic too. I'd have to put my money on him.
Yeah, me too. Number 9. If you could take a weekend anywhere in the world right now, like automatically transported and you have all your accommodations made, where would you go?
Kind of a cheat with the answer because I've been to Europe technically. I went to Germany and then a couple countries close to it. But I'd probably go to Europe and just kind of hop around backpack to all the places I haven't been in Europe.
Name 3 cities you must hit up.
3 major ones, probably Rome and Italy.
You've never been to Rome?
I've never been to Italy at all, and I would love to go to Italy.
Nice. I mean, I've never been to Europe, but still.
It's pretty cool. There's a lot of interesting things about it. Actually, on my trip that I went on recently, we met like a couple of the places we went were big tourist destinations for Europe. We found out like the Canary Islands is a big one, and then Iceland is a big one too for just
Iceland's
everywhere.
been blowing up as of lately.
Really blowing up, and I'd highly recommend it. It was awesome.
Really random question. Did you see the little ponies that they have there?
Yes, yeah.
Are
there's a lot of them.
I was about to say, are they as adorable as they are in the photos?
They're pretty cute. They weren't as small as they appear in the photos. There are some smaller ones, but there's a lot of wild horses in general. That kind of took me aback. Yeah, you'll come across just like kind of flocks of wild horses running around and reindeer.
That's not a surprise.
This sounds crazy. This might be stupid, but I did not know reindeer were real.
You probably thought they were only real like in Santa's...
Exactly.
Totally.
Exactly.
I mean, another name that you probably know them by is caribou.
That's what it is. Okay. I did not know they were the same thing.
They are. Okay. I can see where the mix-up was.
Yeah, so we were driving by on the way to like go see the glaciers, and we just looked over and there's a huge flock of reindeer. What was your question?
My question was if you can go anywhere in the world. So you were talking about 3 cities that you've never been to. So you would go to Rome?
Yeah, so Rome would be one, and then probably London as well. That's where like most of my heritage comes from. I did a 23andMe, and that's like they're not able to like pinpoint it, but it's like the highest percentage they say likely comes from London.
Nice.
So just to see like some of my heritage, also a huge bustling city, so I think that'd be cool. And then probably the last city, probably France. I feel like
City?
Or Paris, France.
I was about to say.
Yeah, because I feel like it's another really big cultural hub. You see a lot of cool stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And plus, I took French for like 5 years.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. Well, it's because I loved hockey and I wanted to speak with hockey players up in Canada, but I realized only one part of Canada.
Quebec?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Quebec is the only part that speaks French like fluently or, all the time.
You should go up and see Quebec.
I'd love to. I have not. I've been to Canada twice. I've been to Toronto and then Victoria, which is right across from Vancouver. But all my money's gone towards podcasting stuff, and so therefore it's going to be a while before I take any major trips.
Yeah, until they start monetizing.
Knock on wood, this happens.
Yep.
All right.
Trying to put it out there.
Exactly. Sorry, folks. I just had to replace a battery real quick, but yeah, we're actually having so much fun that we're actually at the last question already.
Let's do it.
And that is, it's a question that I ask everybody, but the answers always vary. And that is, what is your best, most recent accomplishment?
I would say putting myself in the position where I'm on just my own boss totally. I mean, I have a couple partners in my staffing company that I work in. My sister's my partner in the family business, but and then I do the podcast. But I am effectively, my own boss at this point. And to me, I mean, it's something I've always really strived for and wanted. I kind of knew from a young age, just being exposed to my dad having his own business and entrepreneurial culture. I've noticed something I wanted eventually for a long time. And it's something I'm really proud of. And it means a lot to me to be able to have that.
Well, I'm glad that everything's working out in your favor, Brody.
Thank you. You as well.
Appreciate it, man. So we are at the end of the episode, and I just want to say, Brody, thank you for gracing us with your time and presence.
Thank you for having me, Danny.
Of course. And so I brought you on not only to bring exposure to another fellow Orlando podcast, but even though we're both podcasters, we're both podcasters of different kind. I'm more of a jokesy, not as serious podcast, whereas you, if people want to actually buckle down and actually get something done with their life, they listen to your stuff. You and your sister taking over your dad's company after his passing, and then you deciding to promote other people because you respect the business grind. I think that's all really awesome. And because you do that for all those business people and because you bring people enjoyable content, those are the reasons why I think you, Brody Vinson, have big DK energy.
Oh, thank you. That means everything. Well, I got to say, this has been a breath of fresh air. My podcasts are a little serious at times, but I mean, I like talking like this. This is how I talk in my everyday life. I try to keep the podcast as lighthearted as possible. So this has been awesome. It really has.
Of course. And we don't want to, or at least one of my things is that I never want to make content at someone's expense. Seriously, thank you for everything. And so I'm going to drop all of his socials in the description box below. Don't forget to comment, share, like, subscribe, the whole shebang-a-bang. Brody, is there anything you would like to promote before we head out?
Just the show. I mean, we've talked about it already, but Profession Session, it's on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and now Facebook. So check it out. Cool content, cool guests. I have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. So with that all being said and done, I'm Danny of the Big DK Energy, and we are signing out.